On this week's Carrier App, we speak with Capgemini Consulting to discuss what steps regional providers need to take as they fight to survive. All right, well, thanks for joining us on this week's Carrier App. I'm your host, Dan Meyer, Editor-in-Chief at RCR Wireless News. And this week, we are joined by Michelle Mindala-Freeman, who's the VP of Strategy and Solutions for Capgemini's Media and Telecom practice, to talk a bit about the regional carrier space and what they can do to be a little more competitive in the market there. So, Michelle, thanks for joining us this week. We appreciate it.
Oh, thank you so much, Dan. I appreciate you having me.
Very good. Let me start off with, for those who don't know much about Capgemini, maybe a little bit about what you guys do and kind of how you interact with the telecom space.
Sure. So Capgemini is a full-service consulting and technology services company. We offer a wide range of services to telecom and media companies, including strategic consulting, where we help people with their core strategy, with M&A, with design and innovation projects, to technology services delivery, where we do everything from core application development, testing, and lots of work in the OSS, BSS space and all the surrounding systems, all the way to kind of long-term managed services and outsourced services, where we can run some of those core systems, or we can provide managed testing services capabilities or managed BI capabilities. So we're basically an end-to-end technology services and consulting firm. We've been serving telecoms for about 40 years. Our practice represents about 7% or so of Capgemini's global revenues. That's Capgemini is about a $13 billion company worldwide. So what that means is we have about 5,000 people in 30 different countries who are completely dedicated to serving the telecom community.
Interesting. Yeah, I'm sure most people who are watching this have probably seen the name somewhere at some point in their history in telecom, but it's always good to get a little background as well. So we appreciate that. So very good. So yeah, I guess, again, our topic for conversation is kind of looking at, how the regional operators can be a little more competitive out there. Obviously, telecom has always been very competitive, and it just seems to be becoming increasingly so. Obviously, with a lot of over-the-top players and wireless and the cable companies and everybody involved now, it seems like in telecom, it is a growing market out there. And I guess maybe, kind of taking a overview of the market, I guess what's your view in terms of the competition right now, I guess across kind of the market today?
Right. So, and you're absolutely right. I mean, it sounds almost trite to say it's a highly competitive marketplace, but I guess I will, since it is true. There's a small number of players ostensibly going after about, the same number of customers for what we would call traditional services. We're being targeted by new players in the marketplace. Think like Google Fi or mobile-to-mobile operators who are kind of trying to jump into the fray without being encumbered with legacy systems, with legacy capabilities and investments. The large players in the marketplace, as we see it, are really working to kind of diversify their portfolios. They're finding new ways to grow. So, they're competing bitterly, may I say, with the consumer marketplace, but they're really starting to focus in and open up investments in new lines of business, more emphasis on B2B, more emphasis on enabling IoT. Almost all the large players are making some investments in the media and entertainment space, whether it's the acquisitions that we've seen in the not too recent past from AT&T or the more recent acquisitions of Verizon, but media and entertainment is kind of the next big thing. And with that, I think comes a whole new panoply of alt revenue plays, like I would call them, enabling commerce, enabling advertising revenues, and kind of the large players are looking to kind of generate these very new and different business models that have historically been the realm of, say, agencies and media companies. So the smaller players, the regional players in the space, I think are looking to kind of hold and maintain their own, and in some cases find their niche. And what I think is the most interesting and compelling thing about the smaller regional players is that they can do this with an absolute laser-like focus on consumers and on their buyers. So I think that the marketplace overall is outrageously competitive. Everybody is vying for something new. this is overall impacted even more by the fact that consumers' expectations are, unfathomably growing.
Yeah, true. Yeah.
With this focus on the now economy that they see in all other facets of their lives. And the regional folks and the smaller operators really need to kind of hone in on those consumer demands.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah. Looking at the competition, it is kind of interesting because over the past 10 or 15 years, a lot of the telecom, the traditional legacy telecom operators have done so much to their networks to improve their networks that they have kind of helped along their own competition, really. And so it does seem like the more that they've done, the more that they've helped rivals. And again, the more that they've kind of helped or kind of boosted what consumers expect from the market today. So it is kind of this snowball effect that's happening. Obviously trying to stay on top of it, but it is a growing market out there, that's for sure. So again, looking at the regional guys, it does seem like for some of them, when you look at these big names in the space, it seems like, how can I compete against these large players out there? And obviously, a lot of them have traditionally kind of used that local focus, the fact that they do know perhaps their customers in their markets better than the big guys do. But it just seems like there's so many of those big guys now who are just out there now. Is that still a viable alternative for them, or do they need to look a little broader? I mean, can they look locally, obviously, then expand from there, or maybe what's the best way for them to kind of view, getting out there in front of their customers?
Yeah, I think you bring up a good point, and I actually will refer to a recent study that Capgemini did on customer satisfaction and telecommunication providers. Just in April of this year, we completed a research report that was across 9 different countries. We interviewed nearly 6,000 end customers to really understand how they felt about their carriers. And I'll come to a few more of the topics, particularly around digital engagement and how that seemed to be top of mind for most consumers. But first and foremost, interestingly, we took a pulse of Net Promoter Score across those consumers and those wireless operators, or those telecom operators. And interestingly, we found that the higher NPS scores tended to come from those smaller operators. That the big guys, while huge and offering all sorts of capabilities, were kind of missing a bit in this area of customer intimacy. So when I think about the steps smaller carriers can take, I do think that there is and continues to be and need to be a huge emphasis on knowing your customer and becoming intimate with the customer and the prospect you're trying to serve. So some of these smaller players may be looking at kind of narrowing their focus. Let's think about kind of a Windstream or a telco like that who really is going to hone in the world of B2B. In any event, you need to know your customer, you need to know your prospect. Or if you're a track who's looking to focus on the prepaid market, or even a full service regional player like some of the regional players in Canada or elsewhere in the world, where you focus on balanced B2B, B2C. But to me, the most important first step is to make sure you really spend the time and candidly spend the money to get to know your customer and really invest in understanding what prospects want. I think that tends to be an area of underinvestment, and frankly, I think it needs to be an area of greater investment so these folks can really hone their strategies and kind of what comes after that knowledge. So, let's say that's kind of the first step. Once you have a decent understanding of where you intend to focus and who your customers and prospects are, you really have to start to step back and say, okay, what, from a systems point of view, what really will be my systems and processes of differentiation? What will make me different? What will make me better in the marketplace? How will I serve these customers and prospects back? Will I need, for instance, a best-in-class partner network? If I intend to focus on, say, a narrow market like growing IoT or growing M2M, maybe I need to invest more in the connective tissue that sits behind the scenes, whether that's revenue recognition capabilities or strong partnership capabilities or a middleware framework or an API framework. I think that you have to kind of hone in, what do I need if I'm that kind of smaller or regional player? Well, I need greater flexibility in offers. If I'm going to focus in the consumer market, how do I pay attention to the fact that consumers have different expectations now when it comes to how they add features, how they create bolt-ons? They want a one-click digital experience. What are the systems that I need to work on and invest in so that I can create that ideal digital customer experience? Do I need more agility and growth for B2B? If I'm, look at a client like a Windstream who's spent a lot of time investing in that customer experience for their clients. How do I create a better one-stop shop? Interestingly, also focused in digital. How do I create a better portal for my B2B clients? Or how do I broaden my service offerings? What is going to be my system of differentiation to say, well, I'm not just going to be only a telecommunications service provider, but I understand that I also enable a broader business play for my B2B clients. So I'm going to also invest in IT services and capabilities and partner with a company like us, for instance, to help deliver those services. So you have to spend time kind of coming back to determine what's different and where you need to invest in processes and systems to enable your different. And then focus those investments accordingly. That sounds simple, right? but it is in fact true. So I like to think of three big things: simplify, modernize, and, for lack of a better way to put it, digitize. So if I think about simplification, I need to look at all the systems I have, especially if you're a legacy telco provider. Do I have too many? Have I invested? Do I have 14 different billing systems? Or, maybe not for some of the smaller guys, but for some operators who've grown up with stovepipe lines of business, you do have various billing systems. Do I need all the products that I have? There are an outrageous number of legacy products in most regional and legacy telecom provider systems that just frankly gum up the program.
It's true, yeah.
Make it hard to migrate, make it hard to modernize. And I guess that's that second step. How do I modernize? That means I need to retire old things. I need to invest in new things. I need to anticipate what functionality I might need in place to connect those systems. And then that investment in digital, I think, is absolutely critical.
Interesting.
So, the regional players and the smaller local tier 2 market need to spend money wisely. And candidly, our research shows that customers are more and more preferring to interact digitally, go through web, social, mobile, simple point and click engagements and relationships with their telecom provider. And it works to the benefit of a tier 2 or regional operator. They can invest more in the digital customer experience and refining that experience and responding to their customers' demands in a way that the big guy who is still investing in brick and mortar, who's still trying to kind of figure out, how do I touch this mass market in a way that those big guys cannot. So know your customer.
Yeah.
Take time to determine what, in fact, are your systems and processes of differentiation, what's your different, and invest accordingly, at least in my mind, through a process of simplification, modernization, and digitization. I think those are the big steps.
Yeah, well, and obviously it does seem like, too, that the digitization part of it, while it might be a little complex, it's probably the most cost-efficient way to do it as well, because from a cost perspective, it doesn't take a lot of investment to have that kind of interaction, to implement platforms that allow for greater interaction with customers. And again, social media is a fairly easy way to do that, at least get started doing that. So it seems like that is perhaps a good first step, at least in terms of getting the most bang for your buck, I'm guessing, in that term. Obviously, at some point, you need to kind of work down your systems and, like you said, kind of simplify, obviously. And that does probably require some investment there, but it seems like the digitization part of it is a good first step for all these guys to at least start down that process, it would seem.
Absolutely. And in fact, I think it even goes beyond digitization just in the world of IT. You think about big bang for your buck and not just in your IT investment dollar, but even in your marketing dollar. Digital marketing is a far more cost-effective investment. you think, even if I look at our own marketing investments at the firm, we're very focused on digital marketing, digital investment, digital content creation, creating our own community of experts that engage with the market at large. And I see the exact same tactics that can be used with local and regional operators. Creating that kind of intimate relationship with their customers, using digital media, using social platforms is a much more cost-effective way to create reach without having to invest in some of the more expensive, large-scale, more traditional media like television or print or outdoor.
Yeah, that's that kind of stuff there. And obviously, the large operators are spending billions of dollars each year on their big nationwide advertising campaigns. I mean, you can't compete against that. It seems like you can't watch any TV show or anything without seeing a new cell phone ad or something like that, or a carrier ad. So yeah, that seems like that's kind of out of the ballpark. But you're right, that localized type of marketing seems like a great way. I know I visited some regional carriers myself, and that's been a good focus I've seen from them, is that they are taking advantage of that and really reaching out and kind of being known as the local carrier, which might seem hokey or something like that, but really when you go to these markets, it does tend to resonate. I mean, people do seem to appreciate, when a local carrier sponsors a little local event, they put a banner up and be part of it, as opposed to kind of being just a big name that occasionally you'll see a TV commercial for or something like that. It seems like it really seems to resonate with those communities out there. So.
Right. And I think overall, this investment in digital, whether it's digital marketing, kind of the digital sales and service or customer care, all of these kind of digital interaction models are really resonating with customers. The research report that I referred to a bit earlier took a look at the relationship between customers' willingness to stay with the carrier, or rather, I should say, their likelihood of churn versus their satisfaction with the digital engagement of their carrier. And it was a very direct and highly correlated relationship. So of 46% of customers who said that their digital engagement with their carrier was poor, were more likely to, 46% of those customers were likely to leave their carrier in about a year. On the other hand, of all those customers who said that the digital engagement of their carrier was great, only 14% of those customers had an intention to leave within the next year. So there's a really tight correlation between investing in these nimble, digital, and candidly lower cost engagements, and creating a more intimate and long-term relationship with your customer.
Yeah, and I'm sure too, I know, some of us of a certain age perhaps aren't as social media savvy as others, perhaps a younger age, but I'm guessing in most of these operators, there are some people there who are indeed younger and probably are very active on social media in their own personal lives. And it'd be pretty easy to have someone like that kind of, not necessarily take charge, but you can have someone like that get involved in the social media aspect, and they kind of know what's happening already. And so while, maybe the executive at that company might not be active, I'm sure there are people, somewhere along the lines there who can take, help out in that process and make it a fairly easy transition for those companies, at least to get started with it. And again, as you get more involved, then you can get more complex processes in place, but at least get started with it is a good way to at least start for that.
I totally agree. So I think that although I'm sure people can follow both you and me on Twitter.
Yes, unfortunately, yes.
Shameless plug, no.
Yes.
I do think that is, as we talk a little bit further about, challenges and things that need to be done, I do think that there's this kind of investment in innovation and focus on digital that visionary leaders in the regional carriers really need to have.
Yeah, and I guess maybe taking a step back and looking at more of the deeper investment that companies might need to make in terms of legacy systems. That part there might seem a little more daunting for a lot of these guys, because, like you said, they do probably have a lot of legacy systems in place that, while at the time were leading edge and top of line, have eventually kind of been a little left behind in terms of advancements. And I'm sure for a lot of these companies, it's one of those things where I think all of us, we don't do something long enough, it keeps piling up, and eventually it overtakes our lives. And at that point, you have to do something. But I'm guessing for a lot of these guys, they're looking at these legacy systems and knowing it's a pretty daunting task. And I'm guessing, and not to plug what you guys do at Capgemini, but I'm guessing being able to partner with somebody to help tackle that there's probably at least a good way to start that process. And, perhaps, there might be some concern about costs involved with that, but I'm guessing, firms like yourselves do have various ways and various models in which to help companies do that. So I'm guessing it's not something that they, again, you don't want to put it off too much longer, but at some point it's probably good for them to reach out to somebody if they need that kind of help and say, hey, what can you do for me?
Absolutely. And I think this kind of comes back to helping these customers understand, helping these telcos understand what are really systems of differentiation versus kind of systems of record. I think that's kind of an old Gartner term, but it really does still hold true when you're evaluating your legacy architecture and your future state architecture. And I think we have a lot of experience with a number of clients who've gone through this major change. One of our best clients from a regional operator perspective is Saskatchewan Telecom.
Mm-hmm.
So they're about mid-sized, a couple $1 billion, about 1.5 million customers, and they went through this exact same large-scale transformation where they started to look at the number of CRM systems. They had, the number of billing systems, the number of order management systems, and just because of how they grew up, their customer service reps were swivel chairing between 10 different systems to serve a client. And to your point, it is daunting to take a look at a challenge like that, but it is an imperative to address a challenge like that if you want to manage your costs, if you want to free up cash to invest in some of these new digital experience areas, to invest in new website, new social platforms, new engagement models for customers. And it's not a horrible process. It's especially when you bring in a partner who's had experience doing it. So, you take a step back, you look at the architectural model, and candidly, some of the cloud-based applications have matured so much in the last few years that you can make really easy and intelligent decisions today to say, I'm going to go with an established cloud provider to get a very rich CRM system. I'm going to go with an established provider for some of my other kind of systems of record and look perhaps at cloud ERP. Mm-hmm. So have kind of the bookends of the systems. And then you can make some different choices from a telco perspective in the middle. You can look at your billing system, and you can, so you can look at BSS and you can look at OSS, and you can say, are these systems of competency for me? Do I want to own and maintain these systems? Or do I want to even look a little bit further and a little more aggressively and say, I can look at cloud billing options. So, in the case of SaskTel, they've looked to modernize their OSS BSS stack. They went from 3 different billing systems and 2 different provisioning systems to a simple one-in-one, a standalone and unified biller that allowed them to make offers across all of their towers from wireline, wireless, and IPTV, and an order management system that allowed them to orchestrate the delivery of those orders and bundled orders in a much more streamlined way. So by retiring all of that excess, they were able to free up capital to invest in the modernization of those systems. And then they're able to kind of, and many customers, Sask included, is able to look at those systems at the end of the day and say, okay, now what? Do I want to own and maintain those systems myself and continue to spend a certain amount of operating expense annually? Or do I look to a partner company who has the ability to make specific service level commitments, to commit to continuously improve those systems over time and reduce my cost to serve and cost to own those systems in a managed service model. So back to your point, there's a lot of options. There's options in how you want to tackle the problem to begin with, what you keep versus what you jettison and outsource. And then once you do make the transformation, there's even options there where the ownership, management, and maintenance can still be overseen by you as the operator, but a lot of the burden with respect to ongoing expenditures and continuous improvement, you can kind of push to a partner if you wish.
Yeah, once you get rid of that clutter, it allows a whole different view on what's happening out on the market and what you can do going forward. So yeah, obviously it's always daunting to look at that clutter, but again, once you surmount it, and again, those partners out there to help with that, But once you get past that process, it does open up a whole new world for the regional guys who can, like you said at the beginning, kind of take advantage of what they have in place already and their connection to the market already. So big part of it there. So, well, I mean, again, we can go on for another couple hours on this, but I guess maybe to wrap up, kind of, as we look forward a little bit in terms of what's happening out there on the market and what regional guys could do, I guess, what do you see as maybe some of the bigger challenges facing some of these rural guys, regional guys out there, kind of moving forward in terms of maintaining that competitive position? I know we've touched a lot of them already, but I guess as a wrap up on kind of what they can maybe do and look in terms of what to maybe tackle first and tackle second down the road.
So I would say that there really does need to be a leadership commitment and vision to say we need to establish ourselves as a leader and an owner in our market, and that requires an emphasis on innovation and agility and a new mindset. So, I mean, the first step is you've got to have the vision. And I think that there are a lot of regional players out there who do. SaskTel is one of them. KPN in Scandinavian countries is another. They did dramatic transformation and absolutely changed their landscape. They cut their products by 50%. They increased digital engagement by over 50%, and they saved hundreds of millions of dollars that they were able to reinvest. But that only comes with the leadership vision that says, I need to innovate and change. So if I were to pick kind of like step one, you got to have the vision. You've got to want to innovate. And that often leads to kind of step two, which is got to go find the talent. You made some comments about it a little bit earlier, and I do think that it could be challenging, and I imagine that some regional operators think about this and say, gosh, how do I attract the right talent? How do I attract great talent and keep that great talent to help grow and evolve my business? If I look at my background, I've worked for enormous firms, and I've worked for, companies that are, in the neighborhood of couple $1 billion. And, and I think regional operators who attract talent by saying you can be close to the customer.
Exactly. Yeah.
You can make the market. It is a compelling place to be. And, I believe that these folks are in an extraordinary position to give innovators, young people, new blood into their organization a firsthand look at how they can change the market and how they can grow a company. So, you got to have the vision. You got to go and get that talent. And we all know the talent's there. Yeah. I think the sales pitch is you get to make a real impact when you work for a regional operator or a smaller carrier. And then I think you got to go. You have to let go of those old systems. You have to make some really hard choices about what you're going to jettison and what you're going to keep as your competencies. And I think in parallel, find those small bites, as you've mentioned, Dan, to focus on digital. Yeah. How do I make those small investments today that are cost effective for me in the long run to move from this traditional engagement model and what we see the larger guys are encumbered with to a very focused, very digital, very cost effective engagement model. So I see those as both challenges and opportunities that I'm completely confident that at least our clients in the regional operator space are tackling today.
Yeah, those all seem like, very things that obviously are really important, but things like you said are something that can be easily tackled. I mean, obviously there is a mindset change involved, but these aren't insurmountable type of hurdles to get past. They're all just, kind of focusing on a few things and really kind of laser, getting in on those things and kind of and staying on point on those things too. So, but yeah, that all makes perfect sense on those as well. So well, Michelle, we definitely appreciate the insight on this. Obviously, the market out there, like we said at the beginning of this, is a big market. There's lots of opportunities out there. It's just a matter of the regional guys kind of finding their niche in there and kind of exploiting that niche and really taking advantage of what they have to offer in the market. So again, great insight today. Thanks so much for taking the time. And hopefully we can touch base again soon on the topic. But thanks again for the time today. We appreciate it. Well, thanks for watching this show, and make sure to check us out again next week when we speak with Derek Curtin from the Telecom Council of Silicon Valley and the Curtin Group to look at 5G use cases.